hội đồng bào cả nước, tất cả mọi người đều sinh ra có quyền bình đẳng, tạo hóa cho họ những quyền không ai có thể xâm phạm được. Trong những quyền ấy có quyền được sống, quyền tự do và quyền mưu cầu hạnh phúc.
French colonization. Vietnam's French colonization lasted for 6 decades in the late 1880s. France dominated Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, and they were called Indochine Franchise, or French Indochina. Indochina is one of the major colonial properties in France. French colonialism was primarily focused on production, profit, and labor. It had a significant effect on people's lives in Vietnam. Justification. The French created their own principle known as the mission civilisatrice, or civilizing mission, to justify their imperialism. In fact, this was in effect a French way of saying white man's burden in English. Both ideas were used to endorse the conquest and settlement of people and sites in Africa, Asia, and South America by powerful European nations. French imperialists believed that colonizing the underdeveloped area of Africa and Asia, introducing contemporary political theories, social reforms, industrial methods, and new technologies was their obligation. These countries will be underdeveloped, uncivilized, and impoverished without European interference. Profit and resources. Overall, the civilizing mission was a weak facade. Profit and economic exploitation became the true motive for French colonization. The demand for resources, raw materials, and inexpensive labor was driving French imperialism. It was scarcely possible to understand the growth of colonized nations even where French involvement had been benefited. Rather than British colonization, French colonialism was generically haphazard, expedient, and barbaric. The colonial strategy in Indochina in Paris is neither planned or encouraged. The French government was pleased as long as it was in French hands, accessible to France's economic needs. Colonial government. Indochina's political administration was delegated to a series of governors. Between 900s and 1945, Paris sent more 20 governors to Indochina. Everyone had a distinct mindset and strategy, since French colonial administrators, leaders, and bureaucrats had a great deal of autonomy and jurisdiction. They often exercised greater control than was essential. Self-interest, greed, venality, and heavy-handedness flourished as a result. The Nguyen emperors continued as a symbolic monarchs in Vietnam, but they had no political influence since the late 1800s. Divide and rule. To minimize local resistance, the French used a divide and rule policy, pitting local mandarins, communities, and religious groups against one another, weakening Vietnamese solidarity. The nation was carved into 3 separate pays: Tonkin in the north, Annam along the central coast, and Cochin China in the south. Each of these pays was administered separately. In Vietnam and its neighbors, there was no national unity or jurisdiction under French colonial control. It was also illegal to use the word Vietnam according to a French colonial decree. Economic transformation. French colonization was driven by profit rather than politics. Over time, colonial officials and French companies transformed Vietnam's vibrant subsistence economy and eventually turned into a proto-capitalist structure centered on land possession, increased production, exports, and low salaries by colonial officials and French firms. Millions of Vietnamese workers no longer served for their own good. Instead, they worked for the benefit of French colonists. Massive swaths of land were confiscated by the French, who reorganized them into large plantations. Landowners were offered the choice of living on the plantations as workers or relocated elsewhere. Where there were labor shortfalls, Viet farmers were recruited en masse from outlying villages. Sometimes they came voluntarily lured by false promises on high wages. They were conscripted at the point of a gun. Rice and rubber. These plantations' main cash crops were rice and rubber. In the 20 years following 1880, the volume of land used for rice cultivation nearly quadrupled. Indochina supplied 60,000 tons of rubber a year in the 1930s, accounting for 5% of global demand. The French also established factories and mines to exploit Vietnam's copper, tin, and zinc reserves. Most of this material was exported. The vast majority of the proceeds went to French businessmen, buyers, and government officials. Life under colonialism. Plantation jobs in French Indochina were referred to as coolies, as a derogatory word for Asian laborers. They toiled long hours in deplorable circumstances for pitiful pay. Some employees were rewarded in rice rather than cash. Without rest, sufficient food, or fresh water, a working day may last up to 15 hours. The fact that corporal punishment was forbidden under French colonial rule, many administrators and overseers used it too, punishing sluggish or unwilling employees. Malnutrition, dysentery, and malaria were all too common on plantations, especially those that produced rubber. It was not unusual for many plantation employees to perish in a single day. Benefits. The advantages of French colonization to Vietnamese culture were various, the most prominent of which were changes in education. French missionaries, leaders, and their families founded primary schools that taught both French and Vietnamese. The University of Hanoi was established by colonists in 1902 and has since grown to become a significant national educational institution. Scholarships to study in France were offered to a certain number of Vietnamese students. However, these reforms were mostly confined to urban areas, with little or no effort made to educate peasant farmers' children. The concentration on the superiority of French ideals and culture in this school's curriculum strengthened imperial influence. Cultural impact. Vietnamese towns underwent a physical transition as a consequence of colonization. Traditional local temples, pagodas, landmarks, and houses were deemed derelict and demolished, some of which had stood for centuries. In their location, buildings of French architecture and style were constructed. The names of cities, villages, and streets in Vietnam were replaced with French names. Banking and mercantile commerce, for example, is performed in French rather than the local languages. Areas of Hanoi and Saigon may have been confused for parts of Paris rather than a Southeast Asian city, if not for the environment and inhabitants. Ho Chi Minh. Here, we are gonna know the timeline of his early life, political education, and enlightenment in France, the Viet Minh. Ho Chi Minh's early life. On May 19, 1890, Ho Chi Minh was born the second son to a family of farmers living in Kim Lien, a small village in An Nam, also known as Central Vietnam. He was born Nguyen Sinh Cung but later adopted the name Ho Chi Minh, meaning he who enlightens. Vietnam was under French control when Ho Chi Minh was born. The French had split what is known today as Vietnam into 3 separate states: Cochin, China, known as South Vietnam, Annam, Central Vietnam, and Ton Tin, North Vietnam. After receiving a primary education at a local school, Ho and his brother traveled to City of View to attend a prestigious Franco-Vietnamese academy. 3 years later, Ho left the academy before graduating and worked briefly as a school teacher in the town of Phan Thiet. He traveled to Saigon and obtained a job. Although the details of his journey are not well documented, Ho spent the next 2 years traveling around the world, visiting cities in Europe, Asia, North America, and according to some accounts, Africa and South America as well. Ho eventually settled in London. In 1917, Ho moved to Paris during the height of World War I and became involved in the leftist and anti-colonial activism. In 1920, Ho became a member of French Communist Party. 1930, he established the Vietnamese Communist Party in Hong Kong, which was later called the Indo-Chinese Communist Party. A year later, British officials detained Ho in Hong Kong for his role in political activity, and he was jailed for 2 years. Ho Minh Chin's political education and enlightenment in France. Ho developed an interest in politics while residing in France from 1919 to 1923, inspired by his acquaintance and fellow Socialist Party of France comrade Marcel Cachin. He became a member of the group of Vietnamese patriots in Paris. They have been writing stories in newspapers calling for Vietnamese unity. The party petitioned the Western forces at the Versailles peace talks for acknowledgement of the human rights of the Vietnamese people in French Indochina, but they were rejected. They asked the Allied powers to end French colonial rule in Vietnam and guaranteed the establishment of an autonomous government, citing the concept of self-determination stated prior to the peace accords. The Viet Minh. Ho Chi Minh returned from exile in China in January 1941. Ho moved into a cave in Bac Bo and started preparing for the ICP's 8th Party Congress. He announced the formation of the Vietnam Doc Lap Dong Minh Hoi, a revolutionary force that went beyond political and social organization, the Vietnam Independence League, or Viet Minh for short. The Viet Minh was one of many groups that formed in Vietnam to fight foreign rule. It grew into a major political campaign and an armed power capable of defeating the French over time. Nationalist writers such as Han Cu Trinh and Han Boi Chau denounced French colonization and called for a battle to end it. These writers reassured the Vietnamese citizens that they were capable of self-government. It was no simple feat in a rural society with no familiarity with government or representation. The Vietnamese became used to merely acknowledging their fate and not criticizing the constitutional structure, having been educated on a Confucian diet of obedience. Forming a tiny nationalist party like Viet Minh was one thing. It was a very different matter to transform it into a common movement. Many Vietnamese nationalists argue that their argument using European political theories and techniques, they created hidden societies and discussion groups obtaining Asian and Western political documents, translating, studying, and debating them. They looked into the situation in other Asian countries, particularly China. Ho Chi Minh thought, according to Ho Chi Minh, we must develop the state-owned economic sector to create the material basis for socialism and promote socialist reform. In 1991, a political philosophy was officially codified by the ruling Communist Party in Vietnam. This would then be ratified as the party ideology by the 7th National Congress of the Communist Party of Vietnam. This philosophy encompasses all the policies and political thought that was advocated by Ho Chi Minh and established by the Vietnamese Revolution. This discipline went on to become the prime ideological doctrine that is used for the development of Vietnam as a socialist nation. Origin and East Asian influences. As with all political philosophies, Ho Chi Minh thought has heavily been influenced by other political philosophies, particularly other East Asian philosophies. The travels of Ho Chi Minh had allowed him to learn about the ideologies and philosophies of the diverse cultures of East Asia, which would then contribute to his personal ideology as a political thinker. Discussing these East Asian influences is valuable for this discussion, as these will provide us with the context needed in order to fully understand the discipline. Maoism. One notable influence is from Maoism, its closest cousin as an East Asian political thought. As with Maoism, Ho Chi Minh thought is also a socialist theory that emphasizes on the elevation of peasantry as the head in the struggle against the bourgeois. A major divergence that differentiated Maoism from the mainstream socialist theory under Marxism was that the farmers and the rural peasantry should be the revolutionary vanguard of the class struggle instead of the working class or the proletariat. This was the same thought that was adopted by Ho Chi Minh in his struggle for Vietnamese independence. This influence is in part due to the difference between Western and Eastern societies. Whereas Europe was much more industrialized and thus had more factories and workers, the East, in the other hand, had more farms and farmers due to the agrarian state of its economy. Buddhism. The philosophy of Buddhism has also contributed a huge portion in the formation of Ho Chi Minh's philosophical thinking. Ho Chi Minh asserts that the human power was the power of the national great unity bloc. His philosophical conception about Buddha's human virtue of compassion, equality, charity was that it meant to free people from all suffering and results to a peaceful life for everyone. Ho Chi Minh also promotes the altruistic thought of the Buddha, to requite evil with good. He encourages his people to not requite and take revenge. He believes that the wrong and lost people could change if they were to recognize their defects and fix it and then develop for the better. Instead of seeking vengeance, he recommends his compatriots to use the generosity policy and advise them rightfully. Moreover, Ho Chi Minh used the human philosophy of non-self, impermanence, of Buddhism in pursuance of educating revolutionary morality and criticized the ideology of greed for power. He believed that with the philosophy of non-self and impermanence, which came up from what is called the obvious truth, people are born, everyone grows up, grows old, and dies, would make people in position or power or the Vietnamese people to be more dedicated. For Ho Chi Minh, it was necessary to carefully select people with virtues and talents for important national works, reward people with meritorious services, and people who are capability poor should be provided with services. Mohism. Mohism has also influenced Ho Chi Minh's philosophical thinking, particularly the philosophical ideology, equally fraternal to everyone. Although some factors like classlessness of the ideology and its idealistic factor were eliminated by Ho Chi Minh, which same goes with the other philosophies of Mohism. He selected and absorbed whatever that bring upon goodness, the essence of loving all people. He claimed that whatever was good for people should be provided with dedication and prioritization, and that people who are doing these best services shouldn't be afraid and promote humanity. With that being said, Ho Chi Minh stated that all the people that are part of a group for a good cause, whether it be from the government to the villages or other parts of the country, are the public servants of the people, and that these people must do as much as possible whatever that are good or benefits the general public and avoid as much as possible whatever that are harmful to the people. Taoism or Taoism has also influenced Ho Chi Minh's thinking, although he had refined and selected several progressive philosophical ideologies of the philosophy and created a new philosophy on the scientific dialectics materialism and applied it in real life. Taoism's emphasis on harmony between human and nature, having a simple life and serene soul and being contented with what life or nature has to offer, has contributed a huge factor in constructing and shaping Ho Chi Minh's ideology and as a person. He confided that he wants to have a simple and peaceful life. Even though he was the president of Vietnam at that time, he lived a simple life, clothed like an ordinary citizen, and lived in a house surrounded with a green forest. Confucianism. Another notable East Asian influence comes from Confucianism. Ho Chi Minh was a son of a Confucian scholar and had been educated on Confucianism at a young age. But throughout his political career, he had rejected much of the idealistic values of Confucian doctrine, as it manifested conservative elements on Vietnamese society, such as its degradation of women and its reference to people as minor. Ho Chi Minh, however, applied and modified some lessons from Confucianism he deemed essential into his personal ideology and his vision of a Vietnamese state. An example of this is how in the concept of righteousness in Confucianism, he erased the idealistic value of heaven's will, reinstated the equal relationship between human individuals, and that the president and the peasant are both human beings and thus are both equal. A clear allusion towards the ruler to subject relationship that was taught in the Confucian school. In the development of the Confucian values of being loyal to the ruler and being filial to the parents, Ho Chi Minh added that each individual should relegate their filiality and loyalty only to their parents but also to the country and to their countrymen. Ho Chi Minh remarked once that the good side of Confucianism is the lesson of personal ethics. The good side of Catholicism is benevolence. The good side of Marxism is the dialectical method. The good side of Sun Yat-sen is that his thinking is adapted to the concrete conditions in Vietnam. Confucius, Jesus, and Marx sought that happiness and well-being of society. If they were still alive today, they would certainly be talking together, and I believe they would live in a perfect harmony as a good friends. I am trying to learn from them as an applied student. This is important as this tells us how Ho Chi Minh recognized the merit of Confucianism and other philosophies, both ancient and contemporary, and how he strives to learn from these virtues and apply them to his own personal ideal. Ethics and morality. Ho Chi Minh thought prescribes a certain morality and set of ethical values that Vietnamese citizens and most importantly, party members are required to abide by. These were based upon the lifestyle and values that the late Ho Chi Minh had manifested throughout his life. One major aspect is the value of selflessness. One thing that made Ho Chi Minh stand out as a leader was his dedication towards serving the people. He believed that the final objective of every revolution and every revolutionary was for the people. and thus any act that benefits the people should be done and any act that endangers the people should be avoided. Serving the people is the ultimate goal, which is why, according to him, devoting your life to be a loyal servant of the people is most honorable way of living. This attachment towards collectivism becomes much more evident after knowing that Ho Chi Minh himself disdained individualism as revealed by his short essay, Raise Up Revolutionary Ethics and Eliminate Individuals. One can see from this that the attribution of selflessness and being good to people translate to patriotism, as every good act you do is a contribution towards the well-being of the nation and the advancement of socialism. This also translates well toward the concept of Marxism-Leninism, since in the Marxist-Leninist morality, everything you do should always benefit the collective good of the people and the advancement of socialism. Ho Chi Minh also encouraged a modest lifestyle with a work ethic that is industrious, honest, and thrifty, all revolutionary qualities that are key to a better Vietnam. These are all summed up by Ho Chi Minh's personal values, which are practicing the standard of industriousness, thrift, integrity, uprightness, public-spiritedness, and selflessness in serving the country and the people. Major theoretical works. Under Ho Chi Minh thought, there are 5 major theoretical literature that the discipline is heavily based upon. These are the Proclamation of Independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, The Path Which Led to Leninism, The Last Statement of Ho Chi Minh, The Vietnamese Revolution, Fundamental Problems, Essential Tasks, and Renewal in Vietnam, Theory and Reality. As this report focuses on Ho Chi Minh, we will be exploring the 3 major theoretical works that were written by Ho Chi Minh himself. Proclamation of Independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. The Proclamation of Independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam was a speech that was written and announced by Ho Chi Minh at the Ba Dinh Flower Garden on the 2nd of September 1945. This was the speech that proclaimed the independence of Vietnam, namely North Vietnam, as the country was not yet united with South Vietnam at the time being, and declared it as a free sovereign nation. This occurred directly after the surrender of the Empire of Japan to the Allied and the end of the Second World War. Since Japan invaded Vietnam, its surrender led to a massive power vacuum that led to the series of events which allowed for independence to be proclaimed in Vietnam. In the beginning of the speech, it cited the clause, "All people are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Of the Declaration of the Independence of the United States of America, and the clause, "All men are born free and with equal rights and must always remain free and have equal rights," of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of Citizen of the French Revolution. The speech highlighted political values and truths that justified the freedom of Vietnam in a courageous and patriotic attempt to once and for all defy the clutches of Western imperialism. In the lens of a Filipino, this is a very akin to the Philippine Declaration of Independence that was proclaimed on the 12th of June 1898. When considering its historical and national significance, looking from hindsight, both also bear strong resemblance in the fact that after these proclamations of democratic independence, these respective nations, both Vietnam and the Philippines, would find themselves at war with the democratic nation that the speeches were based upon, the United States of America. The Path Which Led Me to Leninism. The Path Which Led Me to Leninism is a short essay written by Ho Chi Minh that detailed and narrate the circumstance that first led him to discover the ideals of Lenin, and his eventual acceptance of Marxism, Leninism, and the concept of a socialist revolution. It first recounted his life in Paris, where he first learned of communism through the October Revolution and his indoctrination into the French Socialist Party. His inquiries about socialism's attitude towards colonialism would then lead him to Lenin's thesis on the national and colonial questions, which made him realize which the path towards Vietnamese liberation. He then further continued his political discourse in the party, where he had passionately defended his newly found stand against colonialism. At first, patriotism, not yet communism. He spoke as he continued to explain how the process of broadening his knowledge on Marxism-Leninism led him to his conclusion that only through a communist revolution can the oppressed and colonized peoples of the world finally be free. In analyzing the concept of colonialism and communism, this essay provides us with a bridge between the two, since the essay details how a person hailing from a colonized nation came to realize that communism is the path towards the salvation of his nation. This piece of literature is an important gateway in understanding Ho Chi Minh and Ho Chi Minh thought, as this detailed his step-by-step enlightenment with regards to Marxism, Leninism, and socialism. A key phrase that was mentioned here was at first patriotism, not yet communism. This is important since this explains the viewpoint of Ho Chi Minh with regards to how his socialist revolution would play out. The phrase insinuates that before implementing socialist reforms, Vietnamese patriotism should first be prioritized in order to unify the country and turn it into a fully functioning state. This is the factor that separated Ho Chi Minh from Mao Zedong and Joseph Stalin, as they viewed this stance as being hesitant from committing to the global revolution. President Ho Chi Minh's Testament. President Ho Chi Minh's testament was the last piece of political document that Ho Chi Minh wrote before he passed away in the 2nd of September 1969. This 1,000-word testament contained critical messages meant for the people of Vietnam and the members of the Communist Party. Since this document was written amidst the Vietnam War, North and South Vietnam were still not united, which is why one underlying message found throughout the document is Ho Chi Minh's reassurance and hope for an eventual Vietnamese reunification. He pleads the people to continue their revolutionary struggle and triumph against the Western yoke. Another important theme of the document was Ho Chi Minh's reiteration of the significance of the party. He asserts that after his death, the party should still mold itself to be strong and consolidated, always following the core elements in party building and ensuring that the spirit of Ho Chi Minh's ideology and Vietnamese revolution will continue on long after his death through the party. The document would then continue to emphasize and outline the work that needs to be done in order to build socialism in Vietnam. This piece of theoretical literature is a perfect follow-up of the path which led me to Leninism. The latter tells of the beginning of Ho Chi Minh thought and the seeds of the Vietnamese Revolution through his early experiences, whilst the former tells the narrative of the ideology and revolution as it is after his life. Again, using a Filipino lens to better provide analysis of the significance of this document, this bears resemblance to Jose Rizal's Mi Ultimo Adios, with both being the last message of both respective nationalists to their fellow countrymen. Ho Chi Minh thought in the 21st century. In modern times, contemporary Vietnamese thinkers continually assert that the discipline of Ho Chi Minh thought is based upon scientific methodology and is only theoretical and dogmatic. It represents an in-depth, open-minded, rational, and revolutionary structure of perceptions, which is why the use of research, propaganda, and education plays an important role in the scientific essence of the discipline. This is why many of the same Vietnamese thinkers continue to imply that Ho Chi Minh thought should be continually be studied by the Vietnamese people, as this will serve as a guide as to which morality, lifestyle, and ideology will help achieve the vision of Ho Chi Minh thought, eventually reach the vision of the Vietnamese Revolution. Final thoughts on Ho Chi Minh thought. Ho Chi Minh thought as an East Asian political philosophy provides us with lessons in morality and politics among many others. One notices while regarding the values of an ideology of the political philosophy is that it is a nuanced amalgamation between Eastern philosophy and Western socialist thought. It teaches good, selfless values that should embody the ideal citizen and a leader, reminiscent of the teachings of Confucius and Buddha, emphasizing the importance of the collective and the need for socialist reforms such as those taught by Lenin and Mao. As a student who studies political thought, this feat of merging of the two worlds of philosophies is an extraordinary feat for itself, as history has taught us that Eastern and Western thought does not always go hand in hand, considering that one favors collectivism while the other favors individualism. Another significant thing that I was able to get out of this is that Ho Chi Minh thought somehow reads like a guidebook in nation building, which is only natural as this was the original purpose behind its codification by the Vietnamese Communist Party. The discipline places a particular emphasis on the ethics and goals that are needed to be adopted in order to further develop a country. Subjects under Ho Chi Minh thought, such as how the ordinary Vietnamese person should behave and at which level of socialist reforms should be enacted that would best suit the country's current economic structure, are clear examples of this. These, together with the other factors, would then go on to combine into a unique political philosophy that works perfectly as a spiritual and political guidebook for the Vietnamese people and the Vietnamese nation. Drawing lessons once again from a Filipino lens in order to provide a comparative understanding, this political philosophy bears much resemblance to the subject, the life and works of Jose Rizal. Like Ho Chi Minh thought, the life and works of Jose Rizal teaches its citizens regarding the values of ideology of the country's foremost nationalists in order to cement their personal ideologies and philosophies into the social fabric of the nation. Political philosophies such as these are paramount especially for East Asians, as these provide them crucial literature that would further entrench their national identities as fledgling as Asian nations and thus achieve complete national independence.